Always ready.
I know you are. Well, thank you both for circling up again to continue this conversation about, I guess the root of it is healing our money stories, getting more comfortable with the idea of attracting and creating wealth. And within that healing, we are also learning about finances and crypto, which is very exciting right now. So yeah, it's so great to have two people within these fields. Chris, you have the history, the background in behavioral finance, and Yana, you have experience investing in crypto, and of course, doing the deep-rooted money story healing as you. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and yeah, let's get started.
Hmm.
I just had a thought. Maybe we could share our money stories. I don't know if that would feel okay with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like starting from a place of vulnerability, we can really build up from there and like really share the opportunity and healing that we've gone through. So like growing up, middle class family, youngest child of three, two working parents, and like they were really everyone was working so we could live. And it felt like I also grew up in a family that was working to live, and we were in service to the work, is what it felt like, rather being in service to the family. And that's why we're working, although we're working for the family. Like I could just feel this disconnection. And I would witness, how I would see money getting spent. I would see it getting spent on food. I would see it getting spent on different basic survival needs and necessities. But I would never see a surplus. And anytime I would witness a surplus, it would be gone right away. And I thought that was how we did it. I thought that's how we grew up. Like that's what we did. So as I grew up and as I was able to come into my own working environment, I'd work as a 12 or 13-year-old, I'd be working landscaping, but I'd be spending all that money and I would not be saving it. What the hell was a 12 or 13-year-old spending his money on and not saving it? Like it's like hindsight, I'm like, oh man, but I needed to go through it.
Hmm.
Continuing to grow older, credit cards get involved. It's like I'm seeing families spend money on credit cards and coming to this debt. Now that's a part of the story. As I get older, 18, I can sign up for a credit card. Credit card's now an extension and more money for me. This is great. More money and not even working a lot. But when I was working, the money was still being spent. So it's just all spending, all spending, all spending. I was lucky enough to have a grandfather who planned for my education. But when I got the funds, I immediately spent it. Like he gave me a good amount of money to spend on education, but I immediately gave it to the school. So now it's like that education could have been greater than just the school. But I just gave them the first time I've ever seen 5 figures in my bank account. And within 10 minutes, it's gone. Just continuously getting those patterns, continuously going into the corporate world, getting raises, but spending the money on booze and alcohol. I was never saving it. And I was always victimizing myself by never having enough and living paycheck to paycheck. To the point of like, I got into an accident at work. I began to have to rely on insurance, and insurance began to take the money away from me. So there I was, helpless in a body that couldn't work. It was deemed I couldn't work, but the insurance companies were still taking the money away from me.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like in this scarcity, in this scarcity, in this victim. Eventually, I had to break down the wall and realize that abundance is much more than the dollar. And as soon as I made that shift and I saw wealth everywhere, the money began to flow. And now I sit in a much more comfortable position. But it took 20 8 years of figuring this out and like falling into these patterns of family karma until we can be here now.
Was there something specific that catalyzed that shift into abundance?
So while being on insurance and like having these practices or like having these safe falls for disability, I began to like have to live with no money. There was 2 months where I lived without any income. I didn't share it with anybody. I just kind of survived and like realized that, you know what? I never lost the roof over my head. I was always like full. I always had food. I always was warm. I always had electricity. Like everything was available. And then I was like, okay, so I'm just literally tripping myself up for this psychological game every single day. And just going through being physically unable to create any funds for myself while healing. Not having any control of the income, because the moment I make a step forward, the world will be like, what are you doing? You could have done this the whole time. And then just surrendering into knowing that the spirit was going to just help. And once I surrendered into the spirit and knew that it was guiding and keeping me protected and safe, all these opportunities began to appear themselves.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's really relatable for a lot of people in our age cohort. I'd like to share because there are so many relatable moments. So the first time I became aware of money and the conflict it could cause, it was the conflict that made me aware of money. So I didn't have like a base of like healthy mindset when it came to money, because the first and my earliest memories of my parents fighting were about money. And so the messaging that I took away from watching them fight, because we were really young, and I'm also the youngest of three. And so I know my perspective is probably so different from my brothers. I think the three of us all watched our parents fighting and probably took away different messaging. Mine was, mom doesn't trust dad. They can't talk about money. My mom also told me at a very young age, do not depend on a man for money. And so that was my message. I was like, oh, right, like, I see. But that was what I saw. All the fighting was always about money. It seemed like any family grudges that were told generation to generation had to do with money. Like family not helping family when, family was struggling and other family was affluent. So these were my early messages. And then similarly to you, I started working. My first job was when I was 14. I was picking strawberries on a farm. And I think I made like $8 a day and used it to go to the movies. It was
Why not?
And I needed to have my parents drive me, and I was like, I got it. I can pay for myself. And that was great. And I continued working, like my jobs. The message that you need to have a job, you need to keep working was always really integrated. So when I was 16 through the time I was about 20, I was working as admin in doctor's offices. My mom's a nurse, so she would hook me up with jobs. And similar experience. I never saved the money. I learned about weed and was buying weed as much as possible. And again, like using my own money to buy drugs, like that was amazing. And I felt really good about it.
You moved up.
And then college, when I went to college, I was told you need a credit card to start building good credit. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know why it was important. I was just told that's what you do. So I also had a job in college that didn't pay much. I was a writing center tutor and would make like, I don't know, $17 a week, and again, use it to buy weed. And but I used my credit card. My dad was helping me pay off my credit card, so I would use that in the grocery store, and I could buy beer there in the grocery store. So just use the credit card, like free money. I don't know. I also didn't know that my dad had taken out student loans for me. So I found that out when I graduated. I thought I got a scholarship, like which I did get a partial scholarship, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was a surprise. My mom didn't know either. We were both a little like, okay, so these are patterns repeating. Which is, it worked out for me though, because I got my education, and so I thought it was working out. And then I entered the workforce after college, and the messaging there was you need a job with benefits, health insurance, and a 401k. So even though I wanted to be a writer, I kept hearing the starving artist story. You're not gonna make any money being a writer. How do you expect to pay rent in Boston? So I was like, all right, scrap that. Do what makes the people happy, which is me in a corporate environment that seems to win all the approval. So but the money stories didn't change, and I really had no clarity on to why I was making the money, because I just kept, again, like the pattern of spending on drugs, like just got even more, like the more money I had, the more drugs I was buying. So, and the more booze I was buying. And concert tickets. I shared a bit last week about how I just kept spending money on filling a void. And so then the catalyst for me, as I mentioned last week, was some chakra work, and unblocking my sacral chakra and realizing I'm here to create, and money just is supposed to help me create. It's not doing that right now. So then I started looking for, I guess also doing energy leadership work helped a lot, because I learned that scarcity is just a mindset, and I could elevate myself out of it. So I actually have some assignments right here. I picked up the book You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
That was a good
And and she has these assignments which I'll share. Like beautiful things that have happened in this world thanks to money. Just really started shifting my mindset, and just like this mindset of oneness, of realizing, wow, money could really help us all. It just needs to be recirculated, really help. And then I have had a similar experience as you. Like when I left my corporate job, I didn't have a plan. I was just like, I'm needed elsewhere. The world's getting scary. I need to go use my emotional intelligence somewhere and my intuition somewhere that's not, commercial real estate. So I left without a plan, just trusting the universe. And that's what I told everyone. I was like, don't worry, the universe has my back. And they're like, you sound crazy. And but I was happy with my decision. And because I didn't have a plan, it's been quite a roller coaster. So I went through a lot of time without money, and finding that safety and security in Mother Earth. As long as I could connect with the earth, I was wealthy. And as long as I could identify edible plants enjoy all of her fruits and vegetables, I was healthy. And that perspective, I think I began adopting a more like global perspective of how wealthy and privileged I actually am by reading and understanding various humanitarian crises throughout the world. And I was like, wow, a good number of people do not have their basic necessities met, do not have clean water. So why am I so afraid? Like, my family's not going to let me go hungry. They're not going to let me like sleep in the street. Someone will come through for me if it gets that bad. And I knew that, and I could trust that, and that became abundance. And I'll actually share my first client, my first paying client. Like, as we all know as coaches, it can be really scary to receive money for our gifts, because we're being at the soul level, and we're just trusting that the universe will pay us through our clients for being who we are and sharing our gifts. And that's really scary to just trust like that. So, and I wasn't quite there when I began working with my first client. So he sent me a big bag of weed in the mail and paid me in weed, and which was always like my currency. So it was my first time being like, I am worth this. Like,
Nice.
my services are worth all this currency in this bag. And then that like victory was squashed when I shared it with my family. My dad was like, well, you can't, what would he say? You can't take that to the Stop and Shop and pay for groceries or something. I was like, do you resent me for eating your groceries? Like, what is this comment for? But it's okay. Like, I get it. I get it's coming from wanting his daughter to, be provided for. That's probably, I think my parents' fears all along were, how are we going to provide for our children? I know they had days where they had to decide between, food for themselves and food for their kids. Like, it got dire at times, and so I understand that. So yeah, it's cool that we're all able to talk about this, because it has been really hard to talk about as a family, because and I understand that my parents don't want to revisit it. They probably don't want to remember them fighting in front of their kids like that. So when I was completely without money and just focusing on what abundance does feel like. So again, being paid in weed, finding beauty in nature and abundance in nature, and just like the basics, and being so grateful that I have running water. Like, turning the faucet on became a symbol of abundance. So yeah, just finding those symbols of abundance everywhere else, and really embodying them was a huge catalyst for me. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing your stories. I can definitely hear a lot of similarities between the stories, where your money story started from a very young age, where you were witnessing your parents' struggle, which affected your own inner story. Um, Mine is, however, quite different than yours, because mine started in Russia. And in Russia, my parents were actually considered to be fairly wealthy. And that's because the job that my dad had primarily, which he was forced to take, because if he did not take it, there could be an accident type of a thing. So let's just leave it there. So fairly quickly after that, that is when we ended up leaving the country. And we were able to do that because my dad and my mom were both making a lot of money, but my dad primarily because he was forced to be like up on top of this. I think if I remember correctly, it was like a nuclear plant. It reminds me of Homer Simpson's. That's what it reminds me of. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh my God, they're just seeing these long, tall tubes made of concrete and the smoke coming out from the top. So that's where it was different. And then when we came here, I was 13 years old. And this is when it started to change a little bit because at 13 years old, even with all the money that my parents had, the exchange rate is not in favor of the Russian ruble. It's in favor of Canadian dollar. So I started working. We were 13 when we came here. I was 13 when I came here. My sister was 11. And I started working pretty much right away. I washed dishes in the restaurant with my parents, and most of the money I was giving them to help, with everything at home. And my parents were always really good at, or maybe it was just me in my mind that I would just black out and not hear it. But I don't ever remember my parents fighting about money except one time. And that one time was because my mom found out that my dad has been quietly saving money behind her back. Right? And then he goes, oh, I was like, oh, I saved $20,000. And my mom was like, oh my God, you didn't tell me. She was upset that he didn't tell her, but it was like, surprise. So that's how, that's what my dad did. And I remember hearing that. And that's something that I found myself doing after that. Right. And then having worked at the bank, I started working in the bank when I was 18 years old. So having worked at the bank and being exposed to the savings accounts, the investments, the personal bankers in the office and communicating with them and learning from them. And then being assistant manager, I've learned the importance of saving. And I've always I remember even before our daughter was born, because I've shared this with Rachel, and I'm pretty sure Chrissy might have heard. But before our daughter, we lost twin girls. So after we lost them, I knew that I was going to have kids regardless. So I started saving money for our next child right away, putting a little bit in there before we even had a child. So long story short, about when she was about 2 years old, I was able to use all the money in the savings account and buy a used car with no payments, with nothing, just pay for the car. And to me, that actually really, really hurt me and upset me that all the savings were gone. And I was really sad and down on myself. And I didn't really have anyone helping me, because the way that people would help is, oh my God, you're complaining about having to have spent your savings money on a car without going into debt. Why are you worried? You have nothing to complain about, right? But the thing is, it felt safe having it there. And when it was all gone, I felt like I had nothing else left, which of course was not true because there was other savings account, but the mind just focuses on this one particular thing. And so for me, when my money story really, really started affecting me, and these are just little things that led up to the bigger, breakdown of my money story. And I know, Rachel, you've witnessed and you've heard quite a bit of my struggle and my story of the money and how it affected me. But for me, it really started when I became jobless, when I quit my last job that I had, because it was one of those, I can't even explain the experience, but it started for me when my dog passed away, and I was there witnessing his passing. And within that passing, a lot of things it just opened me wide open to everything. And I started to wake up. So I started to experience Kundalini awakening, feeling like I was dying myself or have died, and I'm still kind of like living a life. And little by little, because I started to really see what was happening at work, I recognized that this was not for me. And and because I resisted it for a little while, saying, no, 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 I can do it. I can do it. Yes, I can. But because I continued to resist it, continued to go to work, my anxiety started to get worse. I ended up with having panic attacks. And my last day of work, my panic attack was so bad. I remember my husband getting so upset at me saying, what the hell are you still doing there? Leave already. Just leave, right? You don't need to be working. Um, my hands were like this. I could not I couldn't breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack. My chest was in like my arm and my chest were in like pins and needles, and I could not move my hands, and I had to deliver mail. So it was really difficult to do it with like these crab hands. Yeah. So, and I was 30 years old then. So for me, that's when my money story just really um, broke me down in a way, or started coming out. And I started recognizing that the stuff that we watch, everything that we hear, the conversations we have with people, experiences we have that we are not consciously aware what just transpired, uh, brings us to a place where we are. And then everything just starts to come out and starts to make sense. And it's like, oh my God, what the hell is going on in here? This is not okay. And when you, Rachel, were talking about your first client, how it felt, and how you had that struggle with accepting payment. So you took payment as like a tradesperson, how we used to, right? And here's what I thought of that. It's difficult for us humans because we've been conditioned to be a certain way. It's difficult for us to accept somebody else telling us that yes, you are worth this money and I will pay you this. But it is much easier to allow our bosses, our employers, to say, this is how much I think you're worth, so we'll pay you this much. Right? So we've been conditioned um, to seek the external validation and people tell us how much we think we're worth, as opposed to us saying, this is how much I'm worth. You want to pay it? And if not, then you're not for me. On to the next one. Right? So that's one of the most difficult parts of also, especially becoming a coach. I remember also in high school, I liked math. And this one math class I took was about, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about financing. Like the teacher would get us to figure out, he would say, now it's time for you to buy a car. So you're going to go figure out what kind of car you're going to buy. Actually, internet was already around. So you would go and search the car, the color, the model, how much it costs. And then you're going to figure out a plan and how you're going to get this car. So this was in grade 10. And I picked that class myself, surprisingly. And this was the only class in my entire high school years or school years that I got a really, really high mark. I got 94% in that class. Typically, I was like a 60% student. But this one I got 94, and I was so proud of myself. And then I thought I was going to get an award for that because they were telling us that there's going to be an award, and I got a note saying that I was going to get an award. So I thought I was going to get it for that math class. And I find out there was another Russian kid who got a 95. So he got that award. And the award that I got was for gym, which is at that point was 84% for gym. So that actually did help quite a bit with understanding the value of money. And that's what I don't know how the school education is now, if they teach this kind of stuff or not. But from my personal experience, having gone through that, and then a couple of years later buying a car, I was like, yeah, this was really, really helpful. So there was that. And in terms of, so the catalyst for the breakdown was really the passing of my dog that opened up the doors. and a catalyst for healing, because my money story brought me to a place where, after having like left my last job and being jobless, being a mother, my story was, I'm just a mother, I'm worthless, I don't get paid for doing all these things. I remember even sitting down and thinking, maybe I should just write down a list of things that I do every day and how much I would get paid for them. And I couldn't even bring myself down to do that, because I'm like, nobody will actually pay me for that. So this is just waste of my time. And then that money story went even deeper, where I found myself not eating throughout the days at all, because I did not feel like I was deserving of it, because I didn't pay for it, right? And where did that come from? I have no idea. It could also be one of the things that my parents said to me when I was young, and that was the that relationships and family and people that are working, it's an equal exchange where both are working, both are bringing money in, that everything does not fall into one person, right? So that is part of that, I would imagine, right? Because it's like one of those deeply ingrained stories, and that starts to come out, and the way that we interpret it and the way that we verbalize it to ourselves doesn't always make sense. Sometimes someone we have a conversation with, they're trying to do their best and help us and uplift us and help us to understand the lesson, but the way that it's internalized is different for everyone. And what really helped me to change um, these thoughts, these patterns, was working on myself, investing in myself, saying yes to myself, saying, yes, I deserve this course. Yes, I deserve this course. Learning, and most importantly, hiring a coach. That is what really, really helped me to work through everything and going through the law of being, right? Which was Rachel, by the way, you know that. So that to me was just like the tip of the iceberg. After everything that I have done, hiring a coach and going through the law of being really just opened up my eyes, and I was like, oh my God. To me, it really just reaffirmed what I already knew and felt, how I approach people, how I approach conversations, how I thought of things. It started to make more sense to me, and it made me feel human. And in feeling human, it allowed me to heal what I thought was broken, which was actually not broken. It's just it was lessons that I was avoiding and learning or ignoring.
Yeah.
It's interesting, as we bring awareness towards how we view money and the patterns in which we're dancing with money,
Mhm.
because it's very universal and it's like a very personal thing. No one talks about it. And, we're talking about the dollar, but we're also talking about our self worth. So you look at a foreign exchange, this dollar is worth, in this US dollar, because I know you're in Canada, is worth this much. The Canadian dollar is worth this much relative. Okay, so now I'm just confused. Like, what is my worth?
Yeah.
Like, what is my worth? How do I value the dollar for myself so I can then know how to effectively spend it? It's like, how are we going to begin to get ahead if we don't even understand how we're objectively spending our money, or if we're objectively how we're bringing in the money? um you can find wealth without even having getting another job. You can find wealth. How many coffees are you going out and buying? How many lunches are you going out and buying? How many of these extra things are you buying? When, like, I went through a time, there was a practice where if I wanted to buy some, like a t-shirt, because I became addicted to buying t-shirts when I realized that I was worth having nice clothes, but my addiction came over. So I was like, to get me out of it, I started to then spend the money on a t-shirt. I'd put it into my savings account. and I became addicted to putting that same money into my savings account. I'm like, okay, so this is a fun way to save. And it weaned me off of buying the t-shirts. And that was just now new money. Where before you're so used to just spending it that you're not even used to having it and holding on to it. It's like, what does it feel like to just hold on to something and look at it and have patience just to stare at it before you even decide to invest it? Like, you know, decide what the worth is, like the actual worth is to you. Because it's also different depending on where we're at in our life.
Yeah, and what country you live in as well, as you just pointed out, because I mean, I'm trying to think of an exchange rate, and I can't think of an exchange rate right now. So the one that comes to mind is, for example, in Russia, one American would give a couple of hundred rubles to a Russian person. So the exchange is great. But if you're living there, it doesn't really make a difference because then you got to go and buy American. So you're still spending that much. And I like how you recognized that your t-shirt addiction, buying t-shirts, which is, I mean, awesome because there's so many t-shirts in there. And it's really like, I love t-shirts. And I know, especially when they have images in there, it's buying artwork. Instead of buying paintings, you have it on the t-shirt and you can actually wear it proudly, right? So that's what I was hearing and understanding what you were perhaps were getting your t-shirts for. And then recognizing that, okay, my money is not necessarily in the right place. So started putting it away, saving it and saving it. And then, like you said, then it feels like, where did that money come from? It doesn't even feel like yours. It feels like you won something. And when you were talking about t-shirts, what came to mind right now, with especially with the young kids growing up, they're obsessed with Starbucks. My daughter, summertime, she wanted to go to Starbucks all the time. I have not paid for her Starbucks once because I tell her, if you want it, you will figure out a way of how to pay for it. It's not my job to pay for these luxuries. If you want them, if you believe that you deserve them, you will find a way how to get it. And she did, right? She found a way how to do it. And that's what I teach my kids from having worked with the bank as well, right? Seeing what errors people can make when they're not educated with how to use the credit cards, the importance of savings, which is paying yourself first, and the importance of also investing, right? The bank investing was different than it is now outside of the bank, but it was still very important. And I know that there's some banks that also offer programs where every time you go and spend money, they do a roundup where they round it to the next dollar, and that change goes into a savings account. I've never participated in that program because once I've heard of it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to do it myself. So I would do that. And of course, sometimes it would be a couple of more dollars, a couple of more. And in the end, I'm like, oh my God, I have a couple of thousand in there. What do I do with this free money? Right. And of course, once you ask that question, then the universe says, okay, so you can do this, or let me break something in your car so you can go and fix it. Right, but at least you have that money to go and fix it, because a lot of people may find themselves in a place where they're not saving, they're not putting money away for themselves, they're not paying themselves first, and then something happens. Dishwasher breaks. Happened to us actually quite recently, so we had to get a new dishwasher. You don't have savings, it's gonna come out of a credit account. Something breaks in the car. Luckily, I'm married to a mechanic, so we save quite a bit of money on cars. But most people are not married to a mechanic, so they have to pay for that, and that's expensive as well. If you don't have the savings, the rainy day fund is what I like to call it, because I have different savings account, one for this, one for this, one for that. A little bit goes in there every paycheck automatically, and it's not even noticed because they're not huge amounts. And I'm trying to remember what my addiction was with spending, because growing up, I remember I would get my paycheck and I would save half of it. And the other half, I think it was mainly on food for munchies that I would spend it on.
The
So
munchies.
I think that was that. And then on my friends and just things, but saving half of it, that's how I paid for my college. I went to school for 1 year, and then while I was there, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, why am I wasting my money on business administration? I was going to go into finance. Why am I wasting my money on that when I'm already in the bank? And if I want to learn, the bank will actually pay for it because there's an option. You want to become a financial advisor? Great. There's free lessons for you here. You want to be assistant manager? Great. Free lessons. So I also recognize, like, don't think I want to be a financial advisor because they were putting way too much pressure on their employees that some of them would have breakdowns. Um, so I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to go into that. That's not for me.
Bring up a great point of seeing the opportunity for continuing education through employers. And that's one great way to um, find abundance is utilizing, like looking into the options that many employers do have options for,
Yeah.
like if they think that your education or whatever program or course you're looking into, if employers see that it might benefit the company or might benefit the team, they might pay for it.
Yeah.
I got to take a lot of cool real estate courses when I was in real estate, um, and that, I mean, felt like abundance to me, just free education. Um, and something that, so a lot has come up. I've taken a few notes. So one thing that came up as you're talking about, like going back to when you were talking about um, making a list of all the services you provide as a wife and a mother. It hasn't been that long that women have been able to have our own credit cards and buy our own houses. So um, the way the system was designed was to disempower women financially. So I just love that idea of, because I know there are so many moms and wives or single moms who don't necessarily see external validation in the value they provide as the caretaker. And it just reminds me on a whole, like on a macro level, it's kind of like our relationship with Mother Earth, just taking and taking and taking. Not that that's what anyone's families are doing to the mother. There is this sort of lack of value on not just necessarily what mothers provide, but that nurturing spirit. Like nurses and teachers also have that nurturing spirit, caring for the minds of the young people. Farmers do as well, nurturing the vegetables in the soil. And so just I think something very empowering is just redirecting society as a whole to value the nurturers. And I mean, that might start from within, as each one of us realize how much we get from the nurturing people in the world. Maybe that's when we start valuing it a bit more. Like I know that my oldest brother, who's very into the financial world. He's a managing director at JP Morgan and loves it. I know that he had this moment of awareness during COVID, seeing how much his 5-year-old daughter loves her teacher. Like he watched my niece in awe as her teacher was on the Zoom screen, and it opened his heart a lot to just how valuable teachers are. And so I think that we are experiencing that as a whole, just our hearts are opening to the value of the more nurturing um, presence. And so I just wanted to offer that. That's something we could all open our hearts to
Yeah.
and understand that nurses, teachers, mothers, the value that y'all provide is infinite. And we would not, obviously, we wouldn't be here without mothers.
Mhm.
If that goes without saying.
Honestly, I think as I'm hearing you speak, the word weak came to mind. That like weakness, that their nurturers used to be looked at as you are weak, like the sensitive people, the empaths, the caregivers were looked at as you are weak, you need to toughen up. And in order to survive in this world, you need to be really tough. Um, so that could have played a role in here for me, why I could not see my value, my self worth through taking care of the kids, taking care of the pets. Because at that point we had two cats. We had my daughter had a lizard, and my daughter also had a snake. So taking care of the reptiles was it was sometimes annoying to do. And then the cats, and then the kids, and then the husband, and then myself, and then the house. Right? Myself was typically last, and I remember that I even stopped taking showers because I didn't want to, didn't feel like I deserved it. And I didn't have time for it because at that point I'm tired from doing all these things. I didn't even call it work because I wasn't getting paid for it. And I don't even have the energy to go and wash because I'm too tired. Because then tomorrow it's going to be the same thing over and again, and it was just repeat on repeat. And it's difficult to put a price tag on something like that. And I would imagine most mothers will agree with me that the jobs, and fathers as well, because there are many fathers that do a job that a mother does by taking care of everything and everyone. And hopefully you've set clear boundaries of what your responsibilities are, where your partner's responsibilities are, and what your children's responsibilities are. And that one is huge. Kids need to know that they are responsible for things even at a very young age. So once I've learned that, I taught my kids how to fold clothes, and that added to my self-worth because now I'm like, I taught them, and they are more than capable of doing that. My son washes floors, my daughter vacuums. Are they the best? No, but I don't need to tell them that. I can just vacuum myself afterwards, right? Or I can do the touch-ups on the floor. But the point is sharing that equal responsibility or allowing everyone in the household, because I was taking everything onto myself. Level 4, the caregiver, giving and giving and giving to everyone, and then nobody's telling me what I'm worth. I'm based on all the past movies and stories, and I mean how women were, like you're saying, that how they were basically like portrayed as you stay at home and you take care of the family, you take care of the kids, that's your job, that's your responsibility, but you don't get paid for it. And then being able to get credit cards and being able to go into the job force, that stuff is still in our blood, and it carries forward. So then it becomes our job to work through it and make it easier for the next generations to come.
Yeah, as does the stigma of being an empowered woman in the workforce, like being assertive, speaking up. There's a lot of stigma around that, and it's like I've seen the way that women in the workplace are treated when we do know our worth and assert ourselves in meetings, and are called bitch or bossy or whatever it is. And the work, actually, the corporate world is I never really was that aware of paradigms of the patriarchal paradigm, of a matriarchal paradigm prior to the patriarchal paradigm, until I was in the workforce and just saw how women were really conditioned to do as we're told, um, and not rock the boat.
Yeah.
Like I was really intimidated anytime I advocated for different patterns, and told over and over, don't rock the boat, don't bite the hand that feeds was a big
Yes.
like literally feeding me. Actually that goes back to a catalyst for healing our money stories. Just looking around at the energy of the people around me in the workplace, the partners, shareholders, and noticing how they treat people, and just having this moment of, why would I ever let them determine my worth? Like, and I remember having a conversation with my boss once and hearing the cap, like the salary cap that I had potential for. Like his estimation, I would be making 300 grand tops and plateau at that, unless there was another timeline that he offered, and that would involve becoming more entrepreneurs in the industry and branching off from the Fortune 500. And I was actually really excited about that. And I remember a conversation with my boss when I was like, well, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we breaking off and being our own team out there, like a rogue team, making millions? But when all the money we're bringing in is going back to the company, not to us. And he was like, I have a mortgage, I have 3 kids, I have a wife to take care of. He was like, you have a lot less to lose if it doesn't work out. And that also felt liberating. I was like, you're right, I have nothing to lose. I'm only responsible for myself. And all the money that's coming in is just going to my student loans and my rent and booze, concert tickets. But other than that, I don't have responsibilities to other people, and I'm not really afraid of what's going to happen if I can't pay my student loans. And so just that awareness, being like, I'm not going to let this guy decide that my truest potential is going to cap at 300 grand a year. And I had this internally, I felt this voice. I was like, I am worth millions. You don't even know. And just feeling that, like I felt it. It was real. And that allowed me to leave that situation. And as you said, coaching helped, because after working with a coach for a while, I began to see my true potential as a human being on planet Earth. And I began to see everyone else's true potential. And therefore the potential of all of us coming together and changing a paradigm. Like, why just not just all unlock our true potential and create a whole new paradigm? And so that was a huge catalyst for me.
You brought up something when speaking about being in the work environment and feeling your worth based off your coworkers, the shareholders, the boss. It made me think about how, like, we're a combination of the people we hang out with and the things that we read. And we could look at it as like our money stories too. How do our 5 closest friends and the people we read or listen to, how do they handle their money? Like, we can objectively watch them, how they spend their money. I know I have a close friend who, him and we talk about stocks every day. And just that conversation, talking about stocks, is building momentum, and he's within my group. So now Rachel and like Yana, like, you're in my group. So it's like 3 out of the 5 people, we're all talking about this.
Yeah.
And years ago, it may not have been like that, and everyone I was around was just spending money or being weird about it or shady about it. And
Mhm.
now it's like, because we're talking about it, we're sharing our research, we're able to discover opportunities to grow. And it's like, because we're as one, and just sharing. So you bringing that up, like, brought that influence of we can heal through watching everyone else. And as
Mhm.
we heal and vibrate, and our vibrate raises, everyone else, like, we all raise together and everyone heals together. And like, we may see they've been on their money healing story at this journey. We were there at one point, but we can just ebb and tether and know that we can get each other where we want to on a personal and collective level.
Yeah.
Mhm. And with that, with what you said, I'll expand a little bit more. Is that when we level up energetically, some of these people might feel like they're dragging us down because they're not used to the new version and they're almost like threatened or uncomfortable with the new version of ourselves. So I've learned that in that case, setting boundaries with those people is extremely important. And if they cross that boundary and continue to drag me down, then that means that they are not worth not that they're worth it, that I am worth saying no to them and not having them in my close circle. Because like you said, it's extremely important to surround ourselves with the 5 people around us that we actually that motivate us and inspire us to be a better version of ourselves. And those people that perhaps might also be a little bit ahead as well, so we can learn from them and we can reach for where they're reaching. And it will continue to do that, right? Unless they take a break and stop growing. But most people don't stop growing. Most people keep going and going. So that's just a little bit of an expansion of the 5 people based on what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be tough. Like I understand a lot of people who entertain the money story that money is the root of evil. I've heard that through various groups of friends
Mhm.
along my journey. And for a time, I didn't even realize that I was also holding that perspective. And it was actually really recently that I realized that I was judging billionaires. I didn't know that I was like judging billionaires so harshly. I like if they were sharing, like sometimes they'd be sharing wisdom in the public, like on Twitter or whatever, and I'd roll my eyes like I'm not gonna listen to this clown. I didn't know that until recently when it was Mark Cuban who shared something so relatable that I realized, why don't I shift to choosing billionaires I admire, and like I don't have to um, champion or pay any attention to those I don't admire, but there are plenty I admire. And I think that's something really helpful we can offer the collective. Like I know the founder of Bumble just became a billionaire at 31 years old, 31-year-old woman, self-made billionaire. And so I admire her. I admire some things about Mark Cuban. Like I remember watching an explained episode on Netflix about um, the income inequality gap, or it was about maybe it was Billionaires Explained,
Mm.
and Mark Cuban was talking, and he shared, and this was a vulnerable share. He shared a moment in which he heard himself looking at other billionaires and being like, "Oh, they have more money than I do," and then being like, "Wait, what? How much do I need?"
Mm.
And when I first watched that, I thought, "Oh, that guy, what an asshole! Like, why would he ever, even have that thought?" And then I was like, "Wait." Like now I'm like, okay, that's a very understandable thought because it's not about the money.
Mhm.
It's about like everything that he was feeling from the game of being a millionaire and being in that peer group. But then, and so I just want to express admiration now for that moment of being like, wait, what am I even saying? I have plenty of money. So it made me feel better about him, or just understand him better, to see that very human moment of stopping himself.
He's a great example. When the pandemic hit and the NBA shut down, he paid and gave money to all the employees and made sure they were still making money even though the games weren't happening. He made sure everyone was still being taken care of to the degree that he was able to. It's like those are the innovative moves that we need. Like, okay, problem, solution now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not problem, solution, let's bureaucratically talk about it for 10 months and then never even do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Elon Musk is another billionaire I admire, because I mean, of course, this is all speculation. I don't know the guy, but it seems like he is focused on what serves the greater good. And like, anytime I've heard him speak, that's where his mind goes. Like, manufacture and serve the greater good, make cool. I mean, he also just loves making cool stuff, which I relate to. Like, he's like, you want your Tesla to dance? We can make it dance. So just like having fun in his creativity, and then also, yeah, like the way that he champions crypto, I admire a lot. And yeah.
The other day we listened to one of his he was on a podcast with Joe Rogan. I think it was the May one or the first one he listened to. And he was talking about how he was getting rid of all his houses and all his things. And Joe's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, well, I think my energy could be better spent saving humanity.
Yeah.
Like, why do I need to because he's like, I know how my mind goes. The moment I start building a house, I'm going to want to know the exact dimensions of the doorknob. He's going to get so lost. He's like, why would I spend my energy there when we are in a situation where who knows if we'll be here in 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
There's like decluttering. I was like, damn, that's inspiring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a really good point about, for most of the time, no one's using those houses, no one's in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we see everywhere in the United States. Like, the difference between the haves and have-nots. A lot of the haves have multiple houses that don't get used. So to see a billionaire leading by example, basically saying, if you're not using your house, it's not the most efficient use of property or space, and maybe other people could enjoy it. And just breaking it down like that, I found it to be a positive message to send, so I can include him in my list of billionaires I admire.
Yeah, I don't have a running list, but there's once in a while I'll see, like, Elon Musk is one of the people that I don't know very much about him, but every time I've seen him in the media, I've always been inspired. And now, having heard that, that's a really, like, admirable thing to hear someone do, not just say they're gonna do, but do. And I had a thought the other day, and I wrote it down. It was I can't remember. It was something that I watched in the media, where seeing how people live in some countries where they have absolutely nothing. Right, they are living in this mud-made house and they have nothing. Whereas, look how much we have here. And what I thought of is that I would absolutely love to see every human being living the way that we are living, so everybody is able to have access to the clean running water and heat or air conditioning in some countries, and access to food, or at least seeds that they can plant and take care of and grow themselves, and access to healthcare. Some countries don't even have healthcare at all, or people don't have access to get to the doctor. Um, yeah, it really hurts my heart where I find myself really crying, feeling so privileged that I wish that everybody else was able to live the same way that we are, and that is the biggest part of equality, right? And for a job that everybody, this is the job, this is the position. I don't care about your background. I don't care if you're male or female. This is what you're getting paid. If you don't like this one, go for this one. So it should, like, standard pay for standard jobs. Um, and that way, everybody, even if the person is coming on board and they're brand new, if this is the required payment for this position, that they're the ones that are starting at the same place, right? And of course, all of them continue to grow. Um, and with houses, in hearing what you were saying about even like the measure in the doorknob, perfectionist, right? Um, and then how some people don't even use the houses that they're living in. I remember I watched some, I think it was a class I attended or I watched something, and they were showing a house and showing a heat footprint of where people go in their houses and showing that 90% of the house that people are living in is not being used at all. Some spaces in the house have never even been touched by the human foot or hand. And the concept of minimalism was part of that conversation where if you go and you live in like a house that you build out of a trailer, in there everything is a hotspot. Every corner, everything is used. So there's the houses that we're all living in, there's so much wasted space. And I know that. After I watched it, I'm like, oh my God, that is so true. Because I know there's some parts of my house that I've never been to. So what did I do? What do you think I did?
Went all over the house.
Yeah, I walked around and made sure I touched everything everywhere.
House. I belong in each room.
Yeah, in every corner and everything.
Yep. That's funny. I remember like my college boyfriend's mom's Cape Cod house had rooms like that. Like I remember about to go, like going into it, and my boyfriend was like, "We don't go in this room. It's so beautiful. Like, what do you mean?" um, yeah.
This topic of conversation about dwellings is very interesting because I remember when I was traveling around Peru, I would notice a lot of homes didn't have roofs. They didn't have roofs, they just had tarps. But then there would be homes that would have the roofs. And I was like, what is going on? Come to find out, these residents chose to put the tarps on their roofs because it wouldn't count as a considered house. So then they would save on taxes and wouldn't owe the government money. And they just like understood that they would rather live in a partially built home than being stuck to paying something that they didn't feel right about paying. And that's how the laws were written. And it's like, ooh, it's like we see this here and you look everywhere else, like the laws, and you can really follow those breadcrumbs to see how wealth is how they want wealth to be diversified and how they want it to be there. Because like in the more affluent areas, you weren't seeing the tarps on the roofs, but who knows who was actually richer. The people with the actual roofs could have been more indebted than those that had the tarps on the roof.
Absolutely.
Well, because it's all about image, right? It's all about that image that you put outside. Why do you think people that have a house, and I'm people too, go and get the driveway done? Right, we got the driveway done, used our savings, and of course, Yana again was a little upset about using the savings. But then the people that would walk by or drive by and slow down and look at the interlocking that we actually ended up paying someone else to do, even though my husband would do it. But I'm like, no, it's going to take you too long. It's summertime. I don't want you breaking your back. Other people can do it, right? But everyone that would walk by and look at our driveway being done and drive by and slow down and look at it, that made me feel better about spending money. But that right there is also, we see this in the movies. We see this in all the shows. We're being taught this from a young age. Dress to impress. Make your house look so beautiful and nice. Like, look at all these beautiful magazines of what a house should look like. And if your house is a mess, then no, that's horrible. So everything should be clean and should not have any scratches. And it's exhausting.
Yeah. It's the continuation of the keeping up with the Joneses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure where that story came from or that pattern. Um, and I think it involves a lot of shame.
Mhm.
Shame is at play here. But it was definitely passed down to us. And I think that's how family became so small. Like, that's how we went from being a global family, really caring about our neighbors, our communities, our fellow humans, and living in service, to just being a nuclear family. And like, going back to what my boss said, like when he was like, "You don't have a mortgage or kids," or like, "I've got a wife," uh, the way that our society is structured, it is like money is to care for the nuclear family, and then beyond that, how impressive we can make our nuclear family out to be. How can we use this money to showcase ourselves? And I think that's, yeah, definitely continued on, which is why my spending addiction was on concert tickets and showing people a good time, because that's that was one of the stories that I picked up. Like, well, if I'm making money, might as well take all my friends to a concert at House of Blues. And I paid for the membership there so we could have special access. And what was I getting from it internally? Not a whole lot. It actually resulted in a lot of stress for me.
But how good did it feel to say, "Hey, put it on my tab"?
Oh,
Like,
amazing.
oh yeah, like I got it.
And I look forward to that again one day. I look forward to going around, like, handing out thousands of dollars to the people who used to stand outside of City Market? No, City Feed, where I lived in Jamaica Plain. Like, my neighborhood was like an hour from, or not an hour, a mile from Tom Brady's house. And I remember a woman outside asked for some food as I was coming out of the market, and I went to hand her an apple, and she was like, "Oh, I would love an apple, but I don't have any teeth." And I was like looking in my grocery bag, and it was all like produce, and I was like, "Man, like, how does this woman, like, we're like a mile from Tom Brady and Giselle, but the people in my neighborhood don't have teeth? Like, what is going on?" And so I do look forward to generating that much wealth. I could just walk around being like, "Here, I'll take you to the dentist. We could buy you some teeth." So yeah, it does feel good. That put it on
Yeah.
my tab, like, feels great.
And I want to do the same thing. I think you and I had a conversation about that in the less fortunate community or the homeless community. And the other, I don't know if this person is a billionaire, but he might as well be. So I like TikTok, or once in a while I like to go on TikTok and check it out. And one of these feeds went into my feed. This now famous jewelry maker, and what he was doing, his whole channel is about him going out there and feeding the homeless. And like, there's a couple of times where they would be selling some things, and he would ask, how much is that, right? Or how much would you sell your shoes for to me, because they're like ripped and falling apart? And the lady would say, $20 for shoes. And then he would give her, here's $60 and you get to keep the shoes. Or what can I get for you? And he would go to the store and get them things, whether it being a tent or a blanket or a pillow. And I've noticed, like, they don't ask for much, and you give them $50, they are so happy and so grateful. Whereas most people, you give them $50, what am I supposed to do with this? right? This is not even gonna cover one of my bills. And they're instantly ungrateful for the $50, whereas people that are a lot less privileged, they're so grateful. And there's a couple of people, one of them, he paid for his health insurance, which I can only imagine how expensive it is because somebody broke his house and took everything from him. And the house is really just made out of cardboards. That's a house. And one lady, he ended up getting her an apartment because she's been living on the street for 30 years. And watching that, and he himself came from that neighborhood as well. He came back. He spoke at all 25 schools in a neighborhood to inspire the younger generation and to show them what's possible. And because he also wants to help his community that he grew up in, because he understands. So that's the kind of stuff that I love watching, and I want to be able to do something like that. Even though the community I grew up is there's no homeless people, um, and originally being from Russia, that yes, there were homeless people there, but you don't really hear very often about them. You don't see them very often, at least where we live in a small town. But the way I see it, it's reinvesting the money into creative people because having watched quite a few shows and reading um, these people that are living in the street, they tend to have a lot of talents that were unrecognized or pushed down or suppressed or told that you're crazy, there's something wrong with you, so they put that aside and forgot about it, and then they went to numb themselves some other ways, right? It doesn't necessarily mean drugs and alcohol, but for the most part it is. And allowing people to finally accept themselves and find that self-worth within themselves, and work and uncover those gifts and then utilize those gifts that they already have. I would love to be able to do that one day.
As you're speaking, and really throughout this, I've been hearing solutions, and it's so beautiful. Like what what you're describing, like to me, I just keep thinking humans love. Like humans are inherently loving, caring,
Yeah.
empathic beings. It hurts us when others are struggling. And I think that's the a root of individual separation and addiction is that others are struggling in this world and it's really hard to face and look at.
Mhm.
So we avoid it and become apathetic toward it. And so yeah, as you're speaking, I'm just hearing all this potential for solutions, and it's gonna take I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs a lot. And at the bottom of the pyramid, it's, our basic necessities, our physiological necessities. And then as we move up, so there it's, food, water, sex, we need it to reproduce, um, you know, yeah, shelter. And then as you go up the pyramid, it continues all the way to self-actualization. I remember one day looking at that pyramid thinking, well, if Americans can't self-actualize, who can? We have Silicon Valley. We have all of these tech startups. We could be the first nation to lead by example and making sure that the bottom part of that pyramid is taken care of first and foremost, and then moving on from there. And so to do that, maybe it starts with the individual self-actualizing, because it's pretty clear that we can't rely on any institutions or agencies or governments outside of ourselves. It hasn't, and I don't think this is any, like, it's not really something that people disagree with at this point because we haven't had, like, we've had poverty all along in a wealthy country. And so, yeah, it's time for us to step up, heal our money stories, um, and and also, as we're talking about housing, there's so many innovative designs, like in places like Houston, Texas, which are so hot, like one of the hottest cities in the country. They use a ton of air conditioning, and there's design. When I actually, for my environmental law paper, I focused on architectural design and building design and civic design that could utilize natural resources in a sustainable way to cool a whole city. Like, there's a city in the United Arab Emirates called Masdar City, and it's like kind of like an experimental city where they have these man-made trees that will, collect the heat during the day and then recycle that heat at night when it gets cold, and just things like that. And there are different building materials that we can use. And so if we start thinking in those terms, I see no reason why groups of people can't come together, invest in that kind of design, like something like a green roof, for example. Green roofs were like the star of my paper. I went real deep into green roofs because I would look out over Boston and see just like a bunch of blank canvases, those rooftops, just blank canvases. And I learned all about green roofs and learned that they double the life of the roof membrane, prevent or mitigate runoff, like water runoff and the pavement, and the what holds developers back is the cost of installing a green roof, a short-term cost for long-term benefit.
Yeah.
And so even developers who have tons of money that they can just build like crazy have scarcity. Right? And I thought that was really interesting, that there's
Yeah.
all these solutions out there, and the people that have the money to implement those solutions actually experience scarcity.
Yeah, a lot of builders are that way. Like, even this house is brand new. We bought it brand new, and we would come and check it out as they were building it. The, we saw pretty much the whole entire process, and they cut corners. They leave mess. There's things that my husband had to fix. Some things that we still waited to get fixed and didn't get fixed. Like in the cold room, for example, it's supposed to be cold all year round because there's supposed to be 3 holes, and they only did 2 holes, and we've been waiting for 5 years to get a third hole put in there because in the summertime, it's not a cold room; it's a really warm room. So anything that's in there can end up going bad from that heat and the humidity from the outside. And that's how they make houses because they want to cut corners. And I mean, I dream of living in the house that is green roof, green sides, and green all around, nice and beautiful. I think it's in Singapore that they have these tall buildings where it's the vertical garden,
Yeah.
right? And isn't their city doing pretty well? If I remember correctly, they mentioned that they're doing pretty well. They're very strict with rules as well. There's certain things that are not allowed in Singapore. Um, and I think that's where I saw otters running around on the sides of like the street by the water.
Nice.
And it was just so cute. I'm like, oh my God, you can sit there, you can watch otters just like flip and flop all around. I think it was Singapore that I saw it from. But and then because I've never heard about the green roof. Only I heard of the solar roofs. But I've heard of the greenhouse where you have the vertical garden where you can do your garden all around your house, and that saves a lot in electricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Preserving the heat or the AC or whatever you're using. And it actually helps the house to protects the house from the elements.
Yep, yep,
So why not do that?
yep. It
That's
works.
because they want the house to be broken, so then eventually they can build more houses.
Redo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so as we're approaching 11:30, maybe time to start closing up. Yeah, you cool with that? I thought I could share some of the assignments from the first chapter of You're a Badass at Making Money. And so, all right. So, one of the first chapter one assignments, it's, I'm pretty sure it's make a list of 10 or more. So 10 or more beautiful things that have happened in this world thanks to money. So I could share some of mine real quick. I said art, art supplies, being able to buy them, music, concerts, instruments, all that, books, charities, exploration, growing, gardening, technological advancements, architecture, investments in worthy causes, including ourselves. Yeah, so just something to think about. Another assignment. Awesome things and experiences money will add to my life. Oh, I wrote space travel as one of them. That's one of mine. Nice. I want to go to space. I wrote I can get an electric car. Cool.
They're already out now, so.
Yeah. But I think I did this in 2016 or 2017. I put farm, grow site, studio, housing with tribe. So that's another assignment. Another one. This is a good one. So 10 or more reasons why is I love money because I love myself is the idea. So reasons why I deserve money. So I love this one, especially for more empathic people, because in energy leadership or energy coaching, we learn the 7 mindsets of money at each of the 7 levels. So just a quick review. Level 1 is scarcity. Level 2 is greed. Level 3 is control. Level 4 is charity. And level 5 is opportunity. So investing. That's when we take that leap of faith to invest in ourselves, invest in our friends. Level 6 is money is to be shared by all. And then level 7 is money doesn't exist. It's all just energy. And that's why I've been falling in love with crypto. It's just like, just seeing that it's all just energy being directed. So, I love that because a lot of empaths have a lot of level 4 energy in general. So when empaths do have money, it makes sense that we are very generous with it because of that level 4 mindset is charity. So it takes a moment of self-worth to expand just one level beyond that to level 5 and make that leap. So that's why I love this, like, why do we deserve money? And one of my first reasons is I am generous, I am innovative, I am hardworking, my intentions are pure, I know how to use it to help others. Money will allow me to be more myself. So yeah, I just wanted to offer that and to everyone who sees themselves as generous people, you can use that generosity to understand why you deserve money. And better. So I like to think of it, better in the hands of the empathic people than in the hands of the people who do see through that lens of control and greed. And it's really, I find it illuminating that scarcity and greed are only one quantum leap away from each other. So it's kind of like the same disease. It's still based in not and this fear of it's not gonna be enough, and it's never enough, and so there's really not as big of a difference between certain 1%ers and a lot of the 99% in terms of mentality. So if we can start taking this work into our hearts, opening our hearts to it, to the possibilities of healing our money stories, you know, inundate ourselves with just the possibility of healing, then we can really start redirecting the money from the hands of the control and greed and through our hands and throughout the greater good.
Hmm. That's what inspired these topics on Friday, right? Get the money into the right people's hands so that way everyone gets to benefit from it. That money is for everyone, that level six, and help them to also see that money is really just, just energy. And if you really want it, if you put a right amount of energy into getting it, doesn't just mean that you just sit there and wishful thinking, but actually doing something with what comes to you in terms of, oh, this is what you can do that will bring in that flow of money, and then take action on what you actually get from sitting with yourself, and then the money will flow right in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so once again, we return to Creating Affluence by Deepak Chopra. Last time we shared the letter A. Today we're sharing the letter B. So B stands for better and best. Evolution implies getting better and better in every way with time. Ultimately, getting for ourselves the best of everything. People with wealth consciousness settle only for the best. This is also called the principle of highest first. Go first class all the way, and the universe will respond by giving you the best.
Nice.
What do you think of that one? I know you like that one because you really value high quality, water filters, and definitely invest in the best for yourself.
Yeah.
This like knowing, like, if you show up and you've done your best, even if the best wasn't like yesterday's best, but it was the best for the moment, that's it. It's like every day we fluctuate, every day we move and be, but we show up in different capacities. But if we choose to be our best in the capacity that we have, first for ourselves, and then when it looks into the investment of the things we want in our life, like, we deserve the best. We deserve the product that was made by the best hands. Like, that's within our birthright. Like, feeling fine linens is our birthright. And it's okay to have patience, because that was a big thing. Like, learning patience before purchasing to ensure it was the best for what I needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quality over quantity.
I just said that last night.
Well, we also have, since the whole world became industrialized, the focus shifted onto acquiring the most amount of possessions you can possibly get, which means you need to have a bigger house so you can fill the house with stuff. But at the end of the day, that stuff actually quite often creates friction in the family, because especially when kids are growing up, you're damaging my floors, you're damaging my walls, you're breaking my stuff, you didn't pay for that, you know how expensive that was. And I mean, it's just stuff, it's materialistic stuff. Is it really worth damaging a relationship? Because this is the quality. Quantity is the stuff, and quality is the relationships with people and things that we have, right? When you're talking about linen sweater, you don't need to have 100 linen sweaters and in all different colors. One nice quality sweater that every time you wear it, you love it and appreciate it. And then when it's time for it to go, you can get another one. And at that time, it'll be a different one. Yeah.
I'm gonna check real quick Facebook somewhere kind of weird. I don't know what this is all about. Sounds like someone's messing with us, Andrea. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
healing to whoever was made angry or, yeah, whatever upset this person. Hope you heal. And yeah, so looking forward to next Friday.
Until next time.
Oh yeah, I'm always looking forward to Fridays and Mondays and my
It's
Wednesdays.
nice to be able to look forward to Mondays. It's now like my favorite day of the week now.
Yeah. And if somebody's struggling figuring out how to make Monday your bitch, so to speak, do one thing that you love fairly early in the morning, and you'll be looking forward to Mondays.
I love that.
I love that.
Perfect.
That's great. Great medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, Yana.
Till next
Thank
time.
you, Chris. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for watching.
Thank you guys.
Until next time.
Until next time. Thanks. Bye.